Hello. Today we're going to be talking about local storage and using local storage with JavaScript. So first of all, what is local storage? Well, local storage allows us to save data in the browser which will persist when a user refreshes or closes the page or the browser. It's useful for temporary offline storage and it's domain specific. So if a user visits a different domain, your data will not persist as local storage on that domain, but if they revisit your page again, it'll be back and you can use it. So how can you use it? You can read, write and delete data in local storage using JavaScript. There's a global object called local storage which you interact with to set items to local storage, retrieve items and remove them. So this sounds great, but are there any restrictions? So there's a limit to the amount of data you can store in local storage, and this depends on the device. So if a user is using a phone or a laptop or a PC, this all depends on the amount of data you can store, but it's not infinite. And you can only store strings in local storage. So if you want to store an array or an object or anything else, you'll need to serialize it first before you set it to local storage. So today I've made a simple web page which will allow us to interact with local storage. So it's just made up of two inputs, one where the user enters a key and the other enters a value, and a button so the user can add this to local storage. It then has a table which will just display all of the items in local storage, and we have this function which loads, which is fired on load, and this function retrieves all of the items from local storage and displays them in the table. And we have a remove function which is used for removing local storage, and we have a function which will add items to local storage. So let's take a look at this. In the browser, we're at this page and it's at this domain, just localhost 3000, and we can enter a key. So we can just enter AAA and the value can be something. If I hit add, this will refresh the page and then we can see on load, this item is in local storage. And to verify it's actually in local storage, we can go to developer tools, and if you go to the application tab, you can see in local storage at this domain, it has the key AAA and the value something. And if I add something else with a key new and a value something else and add this, again you can see this will be added. If I delete something from local storage here, so I'll delete the key AAA with its value, head back to my web page, hit refresh, you can see this has now been removed from local storage. So this web page is just retrieving the items from local storage. We can set new items and we can remove them. So it's just an interface to local storage. So we're now going to go into the console and just manually write JavaScript to interact with local storage. So first of all, local storage is a global object. So we can just hit enter and we can see what's contained in local storage. So at the minute, you can see we have one item in this object, one key, which is new, and a value of something else. So if we want to set something else into local storage, we can say local storage.set item. We first provide a key, a new key, and the value is just going to be 123. So if I set that, and then look at local storage again, we can see now the object has two keys, one new and one new key, and the two values. So this is exactly what we expected. Cool. So next, let's try to set something that isn't just a string into local storage. So if I say local storage.set item, and I just give it a key of object, and I give it a value of an actual object. So I just say my text. So this isn't a string anymore that we're trying to store in local storage, it's actually an object. So if I hit enter, this has set the item into local storage. And what does this look like? So it hasn't actually set what we want it to set. It's just set the string representation of that object, but not the serialized object. So looking back in the browser, if I refresh, we get the same output. So this isn't what we want. So how would you set something like an object into local storage? Well, we can do that here by trying to set our item again, which by the way, is something else. So we can't set two different items to local storage with the same name, with the same key. If you set an item to local storage with a key which already exists, this new item will overwrite the old one. But anyway, back to this. So to serialize something, to put it into local storage, we need to call json.stringify on that object. So we have just wrapped our object in json.stringify. So now if we hit enter and we go back to the browser and look at this item, we can see that now the object key has a value of the object. So this is nice, but what if we actually wanted to use this object in our JavaScript code? So we will look at the actual variable. So we'll say local storage.getItem, and we want to get the item with the key object. And we're just going to set that to a variable, and we'll just call it myObj. So now we have a variable called myObj, and you can see it's not actually an object, it's still a string. So how do we turn this string back into an object so we can use it the same way as we could have before we set it into local storage? So we're going to make a new variable. I'm just going to call it myRealObject, and we need to call json.parse, and this will parse the stringified object. So if we call this, and we need to say var, and now we look at myRealObject, you can see it's an object again. So we can interact with this as if it's an object. So now, heading back to the application tab, we can see our three keys, new key, and object, and our three values. So let's try to remove one of these again. Let's try to remove the object, the one we just added. So to do that, we're going to say local storage, and we're going to call remove item. And the item we want to remove is the one with the key of object. And now, looking back here, you can see it's been removed. So there are times where using local storage would be a great solution for your website, but there are also times where it wouldn't be the best solution. And in these situations, it may be better to use something like cookies or use an actual server-side database. So I hope this video on using local storage with JavaScript in the browser helped you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.